Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year. Welcome into 2025. It is our first Cambria style webinar, and we are prepared to kick it off in a big way. First and foremost, my name is Heather. I'm going to be the moderator today. We're going to be discussing several big trends that are coming down the pipeline in 2025 with some industry leaders. We're going to talk about color, quartz, and then, of course, all of the interior design trends that we're about to see in 2025. So if this is your first webinar, I'm going to go through just a little bit of housekeeping and get you caught up on exactly how to follow along. First and foremost, make sure that you continue to subscribe, Cambria USA /subscribe. Our webinars are always recorded, so they're always going to be available at cambriausa.com/style and on Cambria's YouTube channel. We do a lot of great content on that YouTube channel. We cover tips, trends, designs, interviews. So make sure that if you're not following us, you go there, you give us a follow, and you subscribe. We also would love you to tell us what you think. You're going to see some little pop-ups that happen throughout this webinar. Feel free to take advantage of those and comment. If you have a question, go ahead and enter a question into that Q&A box. And at any point during this webinar, we are going to have a team of design experts that are standing by, and they're going to be able to answer those questions for you. Without further ado, let's get into what everybody has tuned in for today. And I want to talk about today's special guest panelist. Right up front, you see our beautiful head of design, Miss Summer Kath. She's the daughter of a cabinet maker. She grew up in the sawdust. She has been with us since the day that the doors opened here 22 years ago. She's also been named one of Minneapolis and St. Paul Business Journal's 40 Under 40 for her notable work with Cambria. She is the creative force behind so many of our brand new designs. I want to give a warm welcome to our friend Summer Kath. Summer's going to be joining us in a second. After that, you're also going to see Andrea Magno. Now, she is the director of color marketing and developing over at Benjamin Moore. She has had a long career with Christie's Auction House, later was part of numerous high-end residential design projects in New York. She has degrees in art history, English, interior designs, as well as an MBA. She's an allied member of ASID and an industry member of IIDA. As a part of the Benjamin Moore Color Studio, Andrea assists in the development of colors, tools, and design research. She has a lot of great content that she's going to be adding today. So I'm looking forward to visiting with her. And we want to extend a warm welcome to New York-based interior designer, Sasha Bikoff, and she is a name and a face that we're very familiar with here at Cambria. She's been featured many times. She talks about being unapologetically maximal, imaginative. She's known for her bold designs that are fueled by her extensive travel. She's also been trained in fine art and art history. She has worked at the prestigious Gagosian Museum and Gallery, and can't wait to get into some of her designs as well. So now that everybody is here, we're ready to jump in and get started with some of this incredible design conversation. Again, make sure that you guys are commenting and adding questions into the little question panel. Also, we've noted everybody's social media formats. So if you would like to give them a follow on social media, we'd love to have you do that as well. Ladies, welcome in. I'm so excited to visit with everybody today.
Thank you.
Great to be here.
Hi, Heather. Hi, everyone.
All right, are we ready to move on? We're going to take a look. Here it is. It's the first trend that we're going to talk about, and this is going to be so exciting. This is a bit of a different format for me, and just to get everybody up to speed for what you're looking at, we're going to be showing images today. Off to the right of the image, you're going to see some of our curated Cambria designs that we have kind of paired as some inspiration, and then all the way over to the right, you're also going to see some beautiful paint choices that Andrea will be able to tune in on. The first trend that we're going to speak about today is the new neutrals, and you may not think of neutrals as a new trend, but what's considered a neutral now has kind of evolved. So Andrea, I want to start with you, and I want to discuss neutrals and the evolution of them and how we're beginning to talk a little bit more about the complex undertones and variations that we're seeing.
Yeah, well, we're definitely seeing a lot more interest in these complex neutrals, so it used to be neutrals, it was gray, it was beige, it was kind of boring, but now, neutrals have become so much more nuanced, so much more interesting, and it's really understanding kind of the undertones of what is making up this neutral and how it's reacting with light. That's really kind of become, a focal point for a lot of people, where they were a little bit, maybe in the past, they were a little bit, intimidated by undertones of neutrals and whatnot, but now people are really embracing it. And we love that just because there are so many things that you can do to really bring a room to life with these colors that are maybe a little bit more subtle, but they have so much interest to them. So for instance, in this room that you see here, it's painted in oilcloth. This is a great example of a color that is going to really have a different character based on the light that it's used. And, it can really, do wonders to complement so many of the different quartz styles, and it's just all in all, it becomes a lot more interesting than it ever has been before.
Andrea, I have a question because we track a lot of the color trends and we absolutely study yours and this desaturation of color we are obsessed with right now. It's such a good transition. And green has been so hot as I look at this image for so long. How do you feel about mixing all the different tones of greens in one room?
So love it. Actually, in our Color Trends 2025, that we just launched in October, you'll see a number of different greens in there. And that was actually a real point of conversation when we were putting the palette together, because it was like, greens have been really important for a while. And you can even see behind me with these different layered greens, we felt like, yep, it is still super important, and we really want to continue to highlight that. So I want to say we have maybe 3 really gorgeous greens in the palette that all really fall into this new neutrals kind of category, where they each stand on their own, but they also work so beautifully with other colors too.
Yeah, I think it's a time of not to be afraid of mixing the different shades of one color. And I
Totally.
love that. And I love that in designing Cambria, because we have a new design called Aveline that has a very subtle green vein, but you can pair it with any shade of green. And that's so important to have that versatility.
Yep, 100%.
Well, we move slides. We're going to move into the neutrals, and you're going to see here, Sasha. I would love to visit with you a little bit. From your perspective, how can we use the natural shades as a backdrop for more dynamic furniture and decor, like we see in one of your designs here?
Well, I think that oftentimes neutrals, although they're easily relatable and understandable to people, and a lot of people gravitate towards neutrals, I think that people also have an issues with neutrals feeling basic or boring or too simple, or I need more in the space, or like more has to happen. So I think that if we really like fine tune our neutrals, and we take the time to find that perfect white, that perfect cream, that perfect ivory or gray, it could be very complementary towards the design of the room and not feel basic and boring. So for instance, in this space, this room has so much architecturally going on. It's a Zaha Hadid building. The window is kind of rounded, and we didn't want to take away with the architectural details of the space. So we decided to keep this room white. It is a breakfast nook in the kitchen. The cabinetry is all high gloss white. And we decided to kind of mimic the white walls with the dining table so that those kind of correspond and relate to each other. But we added moments of visual interest and collectible design with the dining chairs and with the carpet. The carpet is a bunch of different hides and shags, and the chairs are resin. And all in all, it really allows for these textures and the pattern on the chair and like these neutral colors to kind of stand out amidst this very white backdrop. So it doesn't feel basic and boring.
I have a question, Andrea. If we look at this all the way over to the right, we see a color silver satin at the bottom. Can you tell us for 2025, where are we going with grays?
So, grays are not completely off the map, right? Grays
Mhm.
are going to be around forever. You know, they've really become a staple, I think, in our palettes. But what's different about the grays that we're seeing today versus a few years ago is that, you know, they do have a little bit of interest to them. You know, a lot of them that are quite popular are leaning a little bit warmer. You know, we're seeing definitely a lot more of these grays that almost veer on a grayish, right? It's sort of like a blend between gray and beige. Those are really, really popular. But then we also see some that maybe have a little bit of a tinge of green to it, or, you know, there's a little bit of a reddish kind of undertone happening too. So, you know, even the grays have become a little bit more, you know, unique, I would say. And you know, and like Sasha said, you know, it's using that to really complement the whole design. And, you know, even in this image, you know, I love how it's got, you know, a whole white and gray kind of story, but then those chairs really pop out, you know, and it's that contrast between the warm and the cool. And that's the other thing too with the grays, is that we're seeing them paired with warmer colors. So it's not like you have to stay within this cool zone. You know, you can really kind of play a little bit more, which is great.
Summer, do you want to speak to that a little bit with, well, actually, we can do that here when we get into the Inverness Blakely in a moment, because I was going to ask you to speak to our use here at Cambria of the warms and the cools, but we're going to move in to actually perfect transition, Summer. Let's talk a little bit about the
It really is.
innovative designs, right? And the subtle veining that are playing into this neutral trend. And you can kind of cover the cools and the warms and what we've been seeing here at Cambria.
Yeah, I was jumping out of my seat as I was listening to Sasha talk about we can move away from the basic neutrals and also the warm cool. Like, that's the world I live in right now, because we are seeing a huge transition in the surfaces world. You know, Cambria is known for our iconic, bold, high contrast designs, which have been so strong in the last 10 years. And now we're really seeing the movement to the softer, subtle, but we have truly innovated in these areas in creating designs that are not basic. And by doing that, we're adding texture. Here you see Inverness Blakely. It's a beautiful, warm, cool veining. So you have the gray is still there. It goes a little warm, but it's still there. And then we add in that honey colorway, just so soft and subtle. And then our Inverness deboss veins in a taupe colorway. So it's creating a very interesting design. But as you can see in the left-hand side, the vanity and the whole bathroom is in this Blakely, and it is quiet, it's subtle. But as you approach, you can touch it, have a tactile experience, and it can just sit there in the room, but also have nuances that are not just your basic white.
And Summer, for somebody that's not in the design world, you just used a term deboss when you were discussing the veining and the texture. Will you explain that a little further?
So we've created this amazing vein, which you can see right here in the center of the slide. And a debossing, actually, it indents. That's why it's called Inverness. It's an indented vein. It has a little bit of a texture, but not too much. So it's not scary as far as concerning with placing a glass that's going to tip over, or doing your homework on the countertop. It was designed so that it can live with you and maintain with your lifestyle, but it just adds something really special that no one else has done before.
And Sasha, I want to ask, have you had a chance to use any of our designs that have the deboss veining or the texture? And if so, what is your reaction been or your client's reaction been?
I haven't yet, but I'm very intrigued by it now. I think it's interesting because I always gravitate towards, you know, surfaces that do have a hint of color, where I could do almost kind of a tone on tone effect with bringing out that color that I see in the stone or in the quartz in other places in the room. And like, there's been a lot of talk, this conversation about these shades of green almost taking on the new neutrals. And that has always been something that I have done. I mean, it's almost like this khaki color. It's almost like if you think about camouflage and like camouflaging into the environment and like those greens, those are neutrals in our environment. And I think that this green that we see here kind of takes on that, almost that like taupe gray khaki sand kind of role. but you can, because there is that green tonality into it, you don't necessarily have to match it with that green. You could also bring out different shades of green, brighter or lighter, because you have that tonality within that I think is interesting. And I think that there are other colors also that I see in this stone. I think that, like, again, pink is something that I've always said to be a neutral. I always say, like, pink is, there's certain tones of pink that veer off really nude and flesh-like. And to me, that is a neutral as well. So I think that this whole color story and color palette, like, is a neutral, but also like a tipping off point to be able to even go brighter or darker within those tones.
I can't wait to see what you do with some of the designs. We're going to move into our
Same
next
here,
trend,
I have to
which
say. Sasha, I can't wait.
that was music to your ears, wasn't it, Summer?
Yes.
Yeah.
Coming up next, we're going to talk about nature-inspired design. And I want to give everybody a quick reminder that we do have our Cambria teams live and watching the webinar. So if you have any questions, if there's any paint questions, design questions, we are going to continue to follow up. So make sure that you go into that little Q&A area and you go ahead and enter your questions, because we are watching live and we'll be able to take care of you. But Summer, as we get into the nature-inspired designs, I want to talk about the intriguing and emerging psychology of color and how curated palettes can help enhance the mood and atmosphere. This is quite an interesting conversation in the world of design right now.
It sure is. And, I first want to say before I get into that, we've always been inspired by nature, and we seek out colors and actual objects and things in nature that inspire both the colorways and architecture, like fractals, which you'll see a lot of our designs, the Inverness veins look like fractals in nature. And also by taking, I've taken rocks from Serapis Greece or sand on a beach, that we match the tone and put that into our countertop, because that brings nature into our stone and it creates something that looks so much more organic. And this neuroaesthetics, which is newer, it's a concept that's newer to interior design, and it really is an approach that recognizes all of our senses, from sight, touch, sound, smell, taste, and they're so pivotal in our experience with the space. And by creating something that is a feeling that looks like nature, it creates a calming sense. And things that are more red and orange can be more energetic, and things that are green and blue are going to be a lot more calming. And so being very purposeful in interior design, and it's something that I think a lot of the design community is embracing, to create that experiential in the home that really contributes to our mood elevation, our mental and physical health.
Andrea, I'd love you to jump in on that a little bit, because when we talk about the psychology of color, by the way, if you guys missed it at the beginning, Andrea is joining us today from Benjamin Moore. What are you seeing with how colors kind of affect us in rooms?
Yeah, no, that's a huge element of choosing color. And, I mean, it's one of the questions that we get a lot, but people don't necessarily know how to, achieve a given mood in a room. But I would say more often than not, people are asking for what they want that mood to be, almost more so than I need it to be, such and such style. So going back to what Summer said, we 100% see that. And what's really fascinating about color is just how subjective it is, and how each of us are going to react to different colors in different ways. But I think when you bring it back to nature and these colors that we see all around us, they're relatable, they're familiar, they're comforting, they're grounded. So that's where, I think what we see anyway in our research is that, people looking for that comforting kind of reassuring feel that they want to bring into their home. Their home, that's their enclave. They want to use that as maybe an escape from, the chaos outdoors. And so that's where, they're looking for, the greens, the blues, these warm neutrals, because they feel like it's protective. And so really tapping into, color emotion, color psychology, I think that just becomes a bigger and bigger thing, with wellness and you know, using the home is not just, here I have my home and it's XYZ style. It's really so personal, and it's really something that people use to create this space that just is like their, safe place outside of all the madness.
A
To
little bit of
piggyback,
respite.
I just want to piggyback on that, Heather, because beyond color in the neuroaesthetics is texture versus high gloss. And it's something that I think, a lot of homeowners debate as they're, selecting Cambria surfaces, or even, what is the sheen on my wall. And really, texture plays a huge role in creating that more comfortable and secure environment, where the hard reflective surface is a totally opposite experience that you're going to have. So color and touch and feel are so important.
Sasha, I'd love to hear some tips from you on, as you're guiding clients through making some of these big choices, how are you addressing risk taking, or the colors or the textures, things like that?
So I think that I also have a deep understanding of feng shui and colors and emotions and how it makes us feel. And I think that we have to break everything up room by room, and we have to really um, engage with the client as to what is the lifestyle that's happening in this space? What is the feeling that they want to have when they walk into the room or spend time in the room or invite guests into the room? So whereas in the bedroom, one may want it to feel moody and warm and dark and cozy, maybe the dining room is a place that they want to feel a little bit more celebratory and a little bit more uplifting and bright. Maybe the kitchen's a space where is happy and casual and easy and with family and bright and light. So the way that we live our lives and how we want to live our lives in each space is going to drive the color. It's going to drive the textures we choose. So like automatically when I think of glossy texture, I think of, glamour. I think of, this luxury. I think of this like sexiness and maybe even this like homage to the past or some reason. When I think of something more matte, it's a little bit more cool, it's edgy, it's, veers a little bit more casual. When I think of something that's super textured, it's like, more nature inspired, natural, a little bit rougher. So these are all feelings that we need to apply to what our lifestyle is in those rooms. And that's kind of how you decide which direction you're going to take.
Yes, this is all such great advice to really talk about what emotion you're going to evoke in that room is something that, as just an everyday woman who's looking for design tips, that's something I wouldn't have picked up on. Andrea, I want to come to you because what we're looking at here, well, first of all, the shapes, the designs, the colors, the cabinets are stunning. Can we talk, number one, about painted cabinets and kind of where that trend is going in 2025? And then also, what are we going to see with the greens and the blues and the earth tones for tone?
Yeah, so painting cabinets is something that I think is still going to continue into 2025 as being something that people are able to use, as I personally think it's an amazing way to update a kitchen without, having to rip out the cabinets. Even if you just paint the cabinets, you update your countertops. I mean, just between the cabinet color and the stone, like bam, you can make a room that felt tired and dated look updated so quickly, which I absolutely love. I think too, the greens have become, I think over the past year and going forward too, have been super popular in the kitchen just because it's an alternative to doing white, doing a beigey kind of color, like a mushroomy kind of color. It's something different, but it's still going to have that staying power because people, if they're going to do something like painting cabinetry, they want it to last. So, the greens are a really great choice for something different. There's so many different variations on green that you can really kind of put your personal stamp on it. And then thinking about the finishes too, we see a lot of lesser, like a lower sheen on the cabinets, which is really beautiful. And it has that softness. It kind of has that organic sort of feel. And even on the blues, I think we're seeing less of the cooler blues and more of the blues that have a little bit of a green kind of infusion in them. So
Mm.
Silver Mink is a really good example where, it does have gray in it, obviously it falls into the blues, but it has the right amount of green that's going to give it a little bit more warmth. That's a really gorgeous color. And then Desert Shadows is in here as well as something that is a little bit more moody. It's a little bit deeper. We are seeing a good amount of that as well in the kitchen. And then contrasting that with maybe it's a lighter stone, maybe, doing something on the floor, a different wood tone that's going to contrast with it. So, definitely looking to, those earthy tones that are going to have longevity, but they're still going to feel fresh and not, the same old, same old.
Yeah. I think that a
Love
lot
it. This,
of times, I think that in the past, it's like blue has been the popular color that has been relatable to everyone. And whenever I had a client who was afraid of color, like they ultimately went to blue. But I think that it has taken a dramatic shift. And now we're seeing that answer being applied with green, which I think is interesting.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that. We've definitely seen, green is the new blue.
Yeah.
a nice segue into this slide as well, Sasha. Do you want to talk us about your nature-inspired little banquette area? This is beautiful. It's organic and electric at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, again, this is a kitchen breakfast nook, different from the last one that was showed. But this breakfast nook is, has a neutral backdrop. The entire kitchen's white. The client wanted white walls, white ceilings, but actually the cabinetry is the same color as the bottom of the banquette here, which is really like this emerald green. And she feared that maybe it was going to be a little bit bright and a little bit bold, but the husband really wanted this like emerald green cabinetry. So, I was able to push that along. But it's all about the juxtaposition and it's all about the balance. So with this bright green, emerald green, Kelly green kind of color, we neutralized it with a dark stained oak dining table, and then we brought it back with the fiddle fig leaf uh, Roman shade, and then we brought it back to a little bit of a more neutral, muted tone with the purple and more sage fabric. So it's just kind of, like I say, connecting the dots around each piece in the room and offering a juxtaposition to something else. And it's I always say it's a balancing act. So that's really what we have here. And it's a combination of light and dark. It's a combination of more pale muted tones and brighter tones. But again, we're kind of staying within this like tone on tone sensibility here.
I want to go into the next slide if we can, because we're going to get into, designers are always very, very well versed, but if you look at somebody's wheelhouse, I believe Summer said it yesterday that there is virtually nobody that does it like Sasha does when we get into maximalism. And Sasha, earlier you referenced your love of pinks and greens as neutrals. I feel like all of us just need to stand back for a moment and take a look at the glory of this room. It's absolutely incredible. Can you tell us about the design inspiration? And then how do we see maximalism evolving in 2025 with textures and bold color and cultural references?
Yeah, so this room is in a Georgian colonial home. It has all its original millwork, and this is the main living room in the house. Each room is kind of a different color, and there is not a more classic color combination than pink and green. I mean, it's iconic, it's classic, it's beautiful. So actually my clients had this rug, and it's a antique Persian rug, and they wanted to keep it. And within the rug, I felt was very, very neutral. It didn't have that much bright saturation to it. And it felt a little bit lifeless, like it needed a pick-me-up. But within this rug, just like you would see in probably many of your quartz countertops, are these neutral tones that have these different shades of colors that I see within them. So I saw pink and I saw green, and you could pick up a little bit on that, but it's like, again, that khaki kind of taupey green, and it's that pink that feels a little bit like taupey brown. So I drew upon those colors, and I just enlivened them, invigorated them with the more kind of classic Palm Beach, Beverly Hills Hotel, whatever, pink and green color palette. And then after we painted with, these are actually Benjamin Moore paints, we just kept layering and layering with the same colors but different tones throughout the room. So we added in the coffee table, which is like an avocado, and then the sofa, which is an emerald green, and then we have more pinks in the upholstery and the fringe. So I always say designing a room is like painting on a canvas, and we're just building up on paint and building up and adding and adding. So that was kind of the method here.
Gorgeous. Summer, I'm looking to the right of this image. We've got our Windsor brass satin ridge, and we discussed texture a little while ago. Do you want to elaborate a little bit on what we're doing in-house here at Cambria with texture? And I think that this kind of ties into the room that Sasha was just referencing.
I would love to. And sidebar, I would love to see what Sasha does with this Windsor brass satin ridge, because this is definitely in Cambria's Maximalism collection if we had one. This design, as you see in full slab, has so much going on, just like Sasha described her design as an artist, where you're layering things on, but they're all working together. That really was the exercise and what we went through with this design, because it infuses our brass in such a way that it is just splashing about this whole design in a very purposeful way, with a rhythm and a flow. And there's a lot of depth and dimension, but then there's also this kind of satin texture everywhere. And then our Inverness, which we talked about what that is, our Inverness frost vein is also applied. So you have a deboss vein, you have a raised brass moment, and all of this is kind of working together and choreographed in such a way that you step back and it's beautiful. And then you can layer on top of that as a designer in a room, and it somehow masterfully will come together.
Stunning, just beautiful. I want to move on to our next slide, because Andrea, we're going to bring you into the conversation on maximalism, and we're going to discuss color drenching and double drenching. Is it here to stay? And before you answer that, will you tell everybody that's watching, somebody who's maybe not familiar with what color drenching means?
Yeah, so color drenching, I mean, it's really kind of what you're seeing in this room here, where you're taking the same color and you're basically coating the entire space within that color, where you have the ceiling, you have the trim, you have the walls, doors, everything is this major color moment, which is very dramatic, and people are loving it. And it's such a great way to talk about creating a mood. It's a lot more dramatic, I would say. Usually, we've done a lot with darker colors, the deeper colors, it really kind of comes to life. And even thinking about, what are the different sheens, and how can we use one color but change up the sheen, so that each area of the room, the different elements, if there's great architectural elements or molding or trim work or whatever, it can really have its moment within the space. And then double drenching is a little bit similar but a little bit different, where maybe you have one color is the main event that you have the room call it 80% done in, but then you have maybe something that is a complement to it, or, you know, maybe it's an analogous color where, you know, you're bringing in another color and then you're kind of enhancing that color story. So I would say it's probably for the more color brave kind of person. But I think the more that we see these kinds of applications, people are becoming a lot more comfortable with it, and they really want to experiment with that, you know. And I think, I don't know, for me, I feel like the best place to sort of dip your toe in the water on it is even in a smaller space. You know, people are always afraid to use a darker color in a smaller space, but, you know, if you were to do a color drenching effect there, that would be just, it could become your favorite room in the entire home, right? It becomes almost like this jewel box of color. So, you know, I do think that it has some runway. I'm not sure how much runway, but it's definitely, I think, expanding people's creativity and their willingness to experiment with some of these different things in the home.
Do you think that it expands the size of the room or the appearance of the size of the room?
Well, a lot of times what happens is, you know, you're kind of eliminating those hard, you know, meeting points where, like, if you had white on the ceiling in this room, for instance, you know, that's going to be a much harsher contrast, right? But here, because it's
Right.
all the same color, you know, some of those different planes of the room are almost blurred. They're almost obscured. So, you know, it can make the room actually feel bigger, or it makes the ceiling feel limitless, you know, just because you are doing that entire wrap in color. So, you know, it kind of breaks some of the, you know, old rules in, you know, you have to use this here, you have to use this there. It's really kind of saying, nope, I am going to do my own thing. And the results really stand on their own.
I
Really,
want to touch upon that because I always say never forget your ceilings and never leave them out. And oftentimes when we keep our ceilings white or without even, I mean, unless it's an intentional white, but if we just do nothing to them, the ceiling actually overpowers the room and can, you know, take over what the walls are meant to do. And a lot of times when we color drench, we get this like cocoon, almost, I call it a jewel box, which is, you know, something that we want. And I oftentimes I color drench, double color drencher. Andrea and I even worked on a project. I didn't even know there was a term for this, but I guess we triple color drenched. So um, I I think that this shouldn't be considered a trend. I think it should be considered almost like a a basic rule book for interiors is to not leave out the ceiling or you know the millwork, and to have it infused and into the design of the room.
that's so beautifully said. And also, the Haley Cambria design in that space is chef's kiss. I want to go on to our next slide, Summer. And when we say the word maximalism, tell us how unique fabrication ideas with Cambria's edge profiles can contribute to some design aesthetics. Let's do a deeper dive on the fabricating side of maximalism.
Yeah, well, often, Cambria is not a customizable product like furniture, other items that designers get to make modifications. But in fabrication is where you get to be really unique and put your personal stamp on the project. And in this example here with the vanity, you'll see the beautiful fluting, which creates a larger edge profile. And edge profiles are the easiest way to customize because every countertop has an edge profile. And I think what a lot of people don't understand is that beyond what your fabricator offers as a standard, which is your mitered edge, your eased edge, your bullnose, that there are ways to customize. For example, rounded everything is everything right now, and furniture and even walls and arcs and hallways. And that's to be true in your edge profile. And I've seen beautiful stacked bullnose, 3 stacked as a beautiful edge profile that just creates a moment. It's almost an art piece of Cambria. And also another new thing that we're seeing, it's been in Europe for a long time, and I think it's coming to the US, is to really wrap and face your cabinets. Cambria offers 1 centimeter and even 6 millimeter thickness product, which makes it easier in weight to face your cabinet fronts. And you wouldn't have to do the whole kitchen. You could do certain areas. So it goes beyond and ways to coordinate with your full height backsplash, whether you do a waterfall or, coordinate that with whatever you put on the countertop surface. But it's a way to Cambria drench your kitchen, if you will.
That's a new term for us. I like that. All right, heading into another trend, Luxe minimalism. Minimalist design typically uses a more limited color palette, emphasizing the simplicity and the elimination of unnecessary elements. Summer, I think that this is a great time for us to maybe get into some of the alloys in our alloy collections. Do you want to explain that whole series?
Yeah, I would love to. And, we're always looking for ways to elevate the look of Cambria without overpowering a room. And, a couple of years ago, we invented the new collection with alloys, which features a brass and a steel. And we offer it in a smooth surface or what we call satin ridge, which is textured and raised. And with the rise of, brass is still strong, steel has always been strong in the kitchen. This is a way to complement those other materials, whether it's your plumbing fixtures, your light fixtures, and it just kind of adds that elevated elegance, but yet it's not too much in your face. It's still soft and subtle. And what I also love about our alloys collection, because the way we've applied it or infused it in the surface, is you can really play with your lighting and how you light it, because it is going to, if you want to, play up the reflectivity, you can with your lighting, or if you want it to be something more subtle, you can play it down with your lighting. But then also as you move throughout the room, the reflectivity changes. And that's just what I love about it, because it's kind of that surprise and delight moment, and becomes more experiential.
Andrea, I want to bring you in here a little bit to talk about a couple of the more deep tones that we see, the French beret and the char brown. I think when somebody like me, not designer, sees Luxe minimalism, my first thought process was neutrals and airies and light, but it looks as though we're also suggesting some of the deeper tones.
Yeah, I mean, I think bringing in the deeper tones and balancing it with the lighter tones is, very, very successful. And it's really the depth and the richness of the color itself. And so, like you said before, and sort of the definition of this, it's kind of like, stripping away the, extras, if you will, but really just kind of keeping that clean look. And just because it's a clean look, it doesn't mean it has to be a stark white. You can have some flexibility in that. And I think actually this image is a great example where, you can have that moment of a deeper color, but it's also balanced by, the island and the stone and the flooring. And then, you have winks of that even just in the design of the chairs. So that color winds up being repeated throughout the room. So your eye is traveling through. So, it still has a very serene, clean look, but it's not to say that you can't experiment with some of the charcoals or the deeper browns that are also super popular right now.
I want to move forward and take a look at Sasha's take on Luxe minimalism. In the Hamptons home here, it was featured in Cambria Style magazine. You said that you wanted to challenge yourself by practicing some restraint. What did that mean?
So the way that I live in New York City, I would say, is like a closet of curiosities. It's a collection of family heirlooms and oddities and items from flea markets and antique shows, and it's definitely maximalist and combines so many different styles and periods of design. But out east in the Hamptons, I live on Gardiner's Bay, and my lifestyle is it's very relaxed. It's very based on nature. It's me in the garden, me paddle boarding or surfing or taking hikes. So again, the interiors needed to really reflect that lifestyle, which is the complete opposite lifestyle of how I live in New York City. So I wanted to challenge myself by practicing restraint in terms of the design. Whereas like normally I'd be attracted to anything sparkly or colorful or lacquered. Here is all about, it's all about like neutrals and textures, and I say it's about the feels. So, so it was a challenge for me, but there's still all these little moments of me within the space, whether it be the horseshoe crab sconces or the like vintage Desede couch, or if it's like the lace at the end of the bed. There's little whoop moments of things that I love, but it is very restrained here.
Definitely noticing a theme of textures and feels and colors and this very soft tone here.
Yeah.
When we move forward into the next slide, this next slide happens to be a design by Sasha. But Andrea, I want to talk to you about the colors that speak to luxury, but in a more soft and subtle way to evoke the emotion of a minimalist design. Walk me through some of the colors chosen here and some of the suggested colors.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, I mean, I don't want to speak for Sasha, it's
Wow.
her design, but
Yeah.
I think this is just such a great example of, using a very soft, very like nuanced kind of color palette in a room. And, there's actually a lot going on in the space, but because you have this beautiful tonal story, it all feels very easy on the eyes, but there's so much detail, like your eye travels around and it's like constantly, look at the finish on these mirrors, or look at the light fixture, or look at the way that the softness between the window treatments and the wall color, which is beautiful in my eyes, I believe, how they really work together. And it's just this softness that I think really does a lot to exude luxury. And it doesn't have to be, like super bright, or whatever the case may be. You can really have that kind of tonal story happen, that it falls into this luxurious minimalist kind of take. Looking at some of the other colors there with Nature's Essentials, that's a really, really gorgeous one where, it's very neutral, but it has the slightest cast of green to it. So it works really well with a lot of, for instance, the different quartz countertops. It has that softness, but there's still that layer of interest. And pink damask, I love this one just because it has the slightest hint of pink to it that, you can use it with so many other colors, even in some kind of unexpected ways. But, even looking at those three colors, if you were to use all three of those in one space, that would even be, really, really gorgeous.
Yeah, this room.
Sasha, tell the light fixture is stunning.
Yeah, thank you. It's a vintage Murano fixture. It's amber glass. But this room is what I was speaking to earlier, which is pink being a neutral, because this really takes on, again, this like fleshlight kind of neutral tone. And there are many kind of creams in this room that lend for this kind of neutral pink effect.
Summer, do you want to speak about montage for
I
just a
was
moment?
just
That's one
gonna
of our
say,
newer designs.
you and I have the same brain these days. I was
Yeah.
staring at the montage, which is a newer design of Cambria, and it really is in the spirit of us seeing the homes warming up. And this room is, so warm and beautiful. And as I see the montage next to all the color story, it actually pulls montage into the pink world. And it just goes to show you that how, especially in quartz designs, because it's made with this organic quartz reflective material, it's going to take on a life in that room. So if montage was sitting, and Sasha was talking about this before, how you can pull different colors out of the quartz. If montage was sitting there, in the coffee table, I bet it would have this kind of pink glow to it. And I think that's the beauty of how all of our products work together, whether it's color and paint and room settings and sofas and furniture and walls. I think that's the beautiful thing. And that's the wonderful exercise that Sasha gets to go through and I'm sure loves with every client. And I just love it. It's so beautiful.
It's interesting, like
Yeah.
thinking about all these quartz finishes and colors, when you first look at all of them, you know, you may see white, cream, black, gray. But if you take a deeper look and study these samples, you will find the different tones and colors that are really within them, and how you can bring them out into your space through paint and pattern and fabrics. So I think that all in all is kind of like the magic of what you guys are doing here.
That was like, my job has been so easy today. That was literally the perfect transition. This is our last slide. And the last slide that we're going to talk about is, and the trend is, the rise of curated color palettes. And Andrea, I want to start with you to just discuss. Benjamin Moore has a whole color of the year palette for 2025. Tell us about them when they're taken as a whole.
Yeah, so one of the big things that we talked about for color trends 2025 was, you know, we wanted to present a palette that could be used throughout an entire home. So, you know, if you look at all of these paint colors, you know, they all work together so beautifully. You know, one of the things that comes up a lot that, you know, people get hung up on is, well, if I have this color in this room, how do I, you know, transition to the next room and the room after that? And so that was one of the things that we were thinking about, that we wanted to present to, you know, our end users, to really kind of help them and guide them along the way. But looking at the specific colors that we chose, you know, they're all kind of in between colors. You know, they all have a little bit of an influence of something else in them, you know. So like cinnamon slate is our color of the year for 2025. And when you look at that color, particularly in different lighting, you know, sometimes it feels a little bit more plum. Sometimes you pick up on a little bit more of a brownish undertone. And I love the way that it complements the Haley quartz, by the way. That's really gorgeous. And then we also, you know, we have a representation of the browns, just because we felt that was going to be really important as well. And those are all very kind of leather inspired, like a camel hair coat. You know, those are all like the points of inspiration when we were putting together the palette. And then, as I mentioned before, about having a couple of the greens, because we found that to be important. And even stained glass, that's a really dramatic color that we wanted to bring in there, but it does have a strong green influence. So, you know, it's very blue, but it's got a lot of green, you know, it's kind of cousin in there, you know, so, you know, everything works together in this really, really beautiful way. And, you know, we've been getting really, really great feedback from people on how they're using the colors or have used the colors before. And we look at them as colors that could become people's new favorites, you know, so this is a palette that we're really super excited about.
Summer, she mentioned the stained glass just a moment ago. Look at how Travella, like, I
Mhm.
mean, this alone really covers what we were saying, and the purity of the quartz and how it picks up that translucent quality. For someone who hasn't seen Cambria in person, how would you describe that almost mirror translucent material and how it's pulling color like we're seeing on screen?
Well, I think we all understand gems and we have jewelry. And if you
Mhm.
look at just even a raw piece of quartz, and as you move that around, whether it's what you're wearing, the colors, it's going to pick up and reflect whatever it's around. And so you take that raw material of quartz, which, you know, 93% of our slab is crushed up quartz in different sizes, you know, that being the base of our product with, you know, the pigments for colorway and our techniques to create. That is why you have that reflectivity. And that's why it's going to take on whatever is happening around it. And, you know, as I was selecting the Cambria designs to go with these, I love the selection, Andrea, when this came out. And of course, can't lie, Cinnamon Slate and Haley were meant to be, you know, a marriage
Yes,
made
they
in
were.
heaven. But it was so easy to select Cambria designs because they're so interchangeable. You could absolutely, you know, play, you know, puzzle pieces and move these things around, because it truly is, you know, what do you want your space to look like? Do you want your Cambria to be the star? Do you want Cambria to be, you know, a co-star and soft and subtle, and the color to drench the room? There's just so much versatility with these designs. And I think that's what you're really getting at, is that they're not overly specific. They are so versatile, like the in-between stage desaturated designs that are easy to look at and easy to live with. And I think that's the comfort that everybody wants, that you're not going to get sick of your room.
Well, we can't wrap without asking Sasha for her quick 1-minute take on Cinnamon Slate. Just hearing you talk about the pinks and the greens and your love of color, what'd you think of Cinnamon Slate?
I love Cinnamon Slate. So I almost feel like if I were to use this kind of combination, I would incorporate like magenta and fuchsia into this as my bright, which I think would be really interesting. Like, I don't know, let's say we were to double color drench or something. And I could picture, you know, a room in cinnamon slate, but then I could picture like velvet drapes or something in a magenta to kind of like bring out that tone. I think that's really interesting. I'm also getting like a mulberry kind of feeling. So if you wanted to bring it a little bit more like country garden, I could see kind of like a darker, but still like almost a dark, bright mulberry, like blackberry kind of berryish color that's like super saturated and really rich. So I think like this muted palette lends for like a third kind of color that could be either like super bright or really like dark and stormy. So I think that there's so many ways that you could take it. And I think that that's, to me, that's really interesting, where like, you know, the sky is kind of the limit when it comes to like these two options.
Well, great tips today. I loved following and kicking off what we're going to see coming up in 2025. I want to thank everybody on the panel. Thank you all for joining me today. And for those of you that are tuned in, just a little bit of business before we go, make sure that you know that you can discover more design inspiration and expert interior design by checking out Cambria Style Magazine. We've got a blog. You can also go to cambriausa.com/style. Please follow Cambria Surfaces, Benjamin Moore, and Sasha Bikoff on social media. And on behalf of everybody here at Cambria, Happy New Year. Let's bring in 2025. And thanks again, ladies, for joining us for this great webinar. We learned so much today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Goodbye,
Bye.
everybody.